Didn't hear it either. All right, everybody, welcome to the January 14th joint work session for the Ogden City Council and Redevelopment Agency. We have all council members here with the exception of Council Member Chaburka, who's asked to be excused. So, yeah. Well, first off, we'll just do a quick review of our agenda. We have our council meeting scheduled to start at 5:15. And first item is to consider a closed session, and in discussion with the with administration, we're going to not do that today. So we'll start the meeting at 5:15, and then basically do a what's the word? Not adjourn, but a recess. Thank you. Recess until 6 o'clock when we would normally begin, and then adjourn to the council chambers and continue on with the meeting. There are some minutes, and I didn't really look at this closely until now, but so Councilmember Blair, Councilmember Myers, Councilmember Heyer, and then we also have Councilmember Chaburka. So if somebody wants to take those, we can still get those approved today. If not, we'll have to move those to another date.
I did read those. I just kept reading.
You kept going, yeah.
10, so I got it all.
Okay, perfect. Great. So we'll just sign. Thank you for that. Overachieving, yeah. He's like, all of a sudden, no more minutes. Then we'll have a report from administration on the proposed PATH program. Linda Lartiga will be here to present on that. And then,
oh yes, just make a comment on that. You might remember that there was a couple of agreements referenced in the ordinance or resolution, and one was the award conditions, and the other was what they called allocation agreement. The allocation agreement reference was left over from somebody else that used it. So we have updated the ordinance to remove that reference to the allocation agreement. So the ordinance that's in the packet now is corrected, and so it can be adopted as corrected.
That is corrected. We don't need any special language to motion on that. It's already there.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And then we have unfinished business, the Weber Housing Authority, where we don't necessarily have a presentation on that. We will make a few comments about that and then have some public input. And we're going to take, yeah. So basically, yeah, over the course of the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of developments along the lines with that. And so I've got a couple things to share with that, and then we'll take public input, and then we'll probably look to take public input, about 30 minutes, see how that goes, and then maybe a minute and a half per person, and give hopefully enough time for everyone to get up and share what they'd like to share. And I think the mayor had some comments he wanted to make as well, so we'll take that as well at that time. After that, we have public comments, and then we would adjourn from the meeting after that. So any questions on the agenda or anything? Okay, so we will start off. We'll bring up Barton, our planning director, to talk about a couple of proposed rezones. We'll start with the 397, 399 Harrisville Road. Welcome, Barton.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. City councilors. Thank you. So this is a request for a zone change at 397 and 399 Harrisville Road. So this is right at the north edge of our city, right on the border with Harrisville on North Street and Harrisville Road. Here's an aerial that you can look at the property. There are two large lots, each has an older single family home on it, and then they're also proposing a purchase of a little bit of the Buddhist church property, which I'll talk about. So the property is currently zoned R2, as well as the properties to the west and to the south. You can see there's a little bit of R3 adjacent to the property. And they're requesting a zone change. This is 4.92 acres from the current R2 to the R2S zone. The R2S allows single family, small lot, single family, and townhomes. And just to compare the zones, an R2 allows single family on 6,000 square foot lots or duplexes at 7.3 dwelling units per acre, which is 1 unit per 6,000 square feet. The R2S would allow single family on 2,500 square feet lots, townhomes or duplexes at 17.4 dwelling units per acre. One of the stipulations is that the units must be subdivided for individual ownership. This is in the Lynn community, and one of the recently adopted changes to the Lynn community plan. Well, one of the things in the existing Lynn community plan, it says to entertain proposals for in the future for, but does not promise specific zoning for higher density residential between Washington Boulevard and Wall Avenue. So this lot was picked out that says, hey, you can ask for R3 and we will entertain it. So we're entertaining it at this point. When we discuss this with the applicant, this is the statistics. We've shown this slide before. We're doing pretty well with multifamily housing now and meeting that need. We're doing really poorly with meeting need for single family and ownership housing. And so we suggested to the applicant that rather than ask for the R3 and put it, more apartments there, that perhaps a townhome project where individual units could be owned would meet our needs better. And so the applicant agreed with that, and that's why they're proposing the R2S zoning instead of the R3, which the Lynn Community Plan would envision. So one of the things that we are to look at in the Lynn community is historic preservation. As you know, the Lynn community has some of the oldest neighborhoods in Ogden, basically back to when Ogden was just a baby. And there are some existing homes, the existing Fort Bingham out there. And so we're supposed to look at that when we do any zone changes. And this particular property, I put the little star up there to show where the property is. So it's not very close to Fort Bingham, and it's not really part of that original settlement of it. You do have 2 single family homes that are not from that pioneer era. Though the one on the left at 397 Harrisville Road is 1930, so it's 95 years old. And the other one's just a post-World War II home. So we did look to see if those have some historical significance on their own, or these are the criteria we look at. Is it associated with a historic event, a person? Is it have a particular architectural style? Is it an outstanding work of architecture, or to have a distinctive architectural style, or is it easily identified feature of the neighborhood? And neither of them really do. I mean, they are older homes, but they didn't seem to have any particular historic significance. So we're not recommending any particular historic preservation as part of the zone change. The general plan guidelines on this, that zoning should reflect the prevailing character of the district. In this case, here's the property, and right across the street you have 2-story apartments. Just to the south of there, you have 2-story apartments. So looking at the overall character, this particular style of development would fit in with the overall character of the district. Does talk about transitioning from commercial to apartments to single family developments, and you have that. In Harrisville, you have commercial, you have a bank here. So then you have more multifamily, and it would transition to single family. And zoning boundaries should not cut across individual lots or developments. So I'd mentioned this little sliver of property. So they have been in discussion with the Buddhist church to purchase that property. That has not been signed, sealed, and delivered yet. Oh, okay. Okay. So, so part of the requirement would be to finalize that with a lot line adjustment so that the lot boundary matches the zone boundary. And this would just be part of the development. They haven't indicated particularly what that would be used for, whether that's more townhomes or open space or parking or what for the development. So looking at the concept plan, again, this is just a concept plan. I can guarantee you it's not going to end up looking exactly like this. But this was just something to kind of start this discussion with us and with kind of what could be done there with an R2S zone. And I apologize, it's not a very great drawing, but it would have the maximum number of townhome units would be 85. This particular one, I counted up about 78 or so units. There would need to be some variety in the units according to the zoning, either different types of units or different architectural styles. One of the questions was access. So the applicant has been in discussion with UDOT about access along Harrisville Road since it's a state highway, and started that discussion. There's some, UDOT likes to push joint access with joining properties so you don't end up with lots of driveways. And so, there's started that discussion. That may or may not be possible. This property owner came to the hearing at the Planning Commission and wasn't particularly interested in having development happen in there. So it could be here or it could be somewhere else if UDOT allows, or if they don't allow it at all, it'd all have to be off North Street. Open space will be a requirement. It's a requirement of our group dwelling ordinance to have interior open space for the units that's accessible to all the projects. And there's a certain amount in code that would have to be provided. And we did also look at the surrounding area. Are there parks there? Our Park and Recreation Master Plan recommends having a neighborhood park within a half mile of the site. And so we drew the circle, and there is a neighborhood park within a half mile of there. There's also some talk when we updated the Lynn Community Plan to perhaps have a park in this location. If you love to play disc golf like I do, there's a nice disc golf course right there. And you're really not that far from 9th Street Park either. So it's not ideal location because you are sandwiched between Wall Avenue and Harrisville Road. But there are parks in the not so distant area. So the Planning Commission considered this and is recommending that you approve it, again, with that condition that the parcel boundary adjustment be made so that the zone boundary and the lot lines match.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Barton or discussion on this one?
Just one, I think I picked up in my reading that there was some concern expressed around the length of the townhome building.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit, Barton, and let us know where you've landed on that?
Yeah, so the code doesn't have any particular requirement for the length of a building. It does require some architectural features on a building. So if you had a long one, you'd have to break it up. You'd have to do some offsets or do something architecturally so it doesn't look like a huge long building, but there isn't a code requirement, a maximum length of a building.
Okay. The plan is only 6 or 7 slopes.
Councilmember Hire?
Hi, Martin. Thank you for your presentation. I am pretty familiar with this area. And, well, I don't think it's a real concern, but I think when we did discuss it with respects to the the former school district property.
Yes.
That went this way, about 5 acres. Develops, as dense as an R3. With the accommodations we've made for the, R2S. And I think there was some concern that we probably have to make some changes with respect to that. And I know we never had. Did the planning commission have any of those discussions about the density? That's 20 units an acre, sounds like to me, pretty close. Which is pretty dense.
Yeah, the planning commission didn't discuss that. So yeah, like I said in the report, I think it's allows you up to about 17.5 units per acre. Yeah, the planning commission didn't have a discussion about doing something different than that.
Okay, I just wondered, I still think we do need to look at that. We need to see if it's developing as we expected that it would when we made the zone. And these 5-ish acres, I really don't think it does. I don't think it meets the initial goals that we had when we developed the zone. Although like I said, I don't think it's a problem here with its location, but I think overall it's generally what I look at.
Have we built has the city had an R2S zone built since the inception of that zoning designation?
Oh, this is like the 4th project that's got that zone. None of them have actually been built out yet, but this is like the 4th project with that zoning.
It'd be interesting to see what visually they begin to look like.
Yeah, I think that, my reservation was, okay, let's see how many individual, owners actually are in that 80 units. If it's 80 different people, that's great. If it's 10, might not be a good thing, so. But it's still pretty darn dense. It's still R3 dense.
Yeah. I don't know, at what point does the approval coming off of Harrisville Road potentially occur? Do we know what that process would look like?
Yes, so usually there's a city process and the state process. So the city process would be a site plan review and then go to the planning commission for review. And kind of parallel to that would be the UDOT process where they would apply for an access permit. And that would go through the UDOT review process. And if they were satisfied, then they would grant that access permit, contingent on the city approval, which would be contingent on the UDOT.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Is there any recommendations that the planning commission might have or that you would anticipate to mitigate the concerns of that neighbor on, I'm trying to remember what address that is, but
yeah,
it's like, what would those actions look like?
yeah. So there is a requirement that the driveway be 8 feet from the property line. So if basically I believe the neighbor would have to agree to a joint access. Can't just be forced upon them. Otherwise, there's a separation between there. Planning commission can do fencing around it. That's a requirement, and could require some shrubs or trees along that to sort of create a buffer
A
there.
buffer zone, yeah.
And they might have some other creative solutions too.
I'm also kind of wondering if there's discussion about an HOA in the area where there's so much, they're pretty tight group of housing. It might, the common, get that common open space. How you gonna manage stuff like that?
Yeah, it'll be required to have
Yeah.
a homeowner association. Yeah.
All
They'll
right.
manage all that.
Any other questions? I think this comes to us on the, shoot, I was gonna look that up. Is it the 21st? Do we see this next week?
It's the 4th.
The 4th. Okay. So if we have any additional questions, and the petitioner's here today, but we'll have an opportunity to hear from him on the 4th as well. We would get those to you.
Okay.
Okay, all righty. Let's see. Up next, we also have a proposed rezone 2869 grant.
Yes, okay. This too was a request from a property owner for a rezone. Race Osler is the petitioner here. And this property is at 2869 Grant. It's currently a CP3, which is a regional commercial zone. It's just over 10,000 square feet, so it's not that large of a property. And this is a photo that you can see. It is a vacant lot. There is a home to the south of it. To the north is a commercial building that has not been occupied for commercial in a while, and it has an attached accessory apartment to it, 2 accessory apartments to that commercial building. So the applicant is requesting a rezone from the regional commercial to an R4 zone with a conditional overlay, and the conditional overlay would limit it to either a single family dwelling, townhome subdivided for individual ownership, or a condominium, a fourplex with a condominium. So, and one of the reasons for the request, you can see it's sort of an odd place for a C3 zone. On over here you have Wall Avenue, and it's several blocks away from Wall Avenue. Over here you have Washington, and it's a block away from Washington Boulevard. So it's not really on the beaten path. So it's not really a great spot for commercial. And you can see it's sort of a weird peninsula of property. There's just this and the property to the north of it on that side of the road that are zoned that CP3. And as you know, we recently adopted an ordinance that prohibits residential development in that CP3 zone. And so that spurred the applicant to request this R4 zoning. And like I mentioned, this would be the conditional overlay, which would limit it to those types of uses. In looking at the Jefferson Community Plan, it actually contains this option to rezone to R4. So it's another one of these where we are supposed to entertain the request for R4. And so we're entertaining it now. And if it's approved, it would be consistent with that map. We looked at some other vision strategies of this Jefferson area. Its goals to integrate new multifamily and single family development in the surrounding areas, and to explore the use of incentives to enhance and increase home ownership. And this is why we suggested that if it were to go to an R4, that we'd like to have some home ownership options here through, again, either being a single family home or a condominium or a townhomes subdivided for individual ownership. And so the applicant agreed with that. And so they've proposed this conditional overlay to limit it to those. So some of the zone change guidelines that we talked about before on the other project, zoning should reflect the prevailing character of the overall district. You can see it's really more part of this R4 than the C3. And so we do feel that it does reflect the overall district. Multifamily can be used as a buffer between commercial and single family, and this would serve that purpose. There should be buffering between types of uses, and again, there's just this one commercial use just to the north of it. To the south, it's single family. And again, our records show that this building has been vacant and there's 2 apartments. I wouldn't be totally surprised if they came in at some point and requested an R4 zoning so they could just use that all as multifamily, because it's just not it's just off the beaten path for commercial uses. So the planning commission has looked at this and has recommended that you approve the rezone and the development agreement.
Great. Any questions from the council or discussion on that?
Barton, I have a question. So, one of the things that makes some of these neighborhoods really cute and charming are that they have small areas where they might be able to gather, whether that's a restaurant or a coffee shop or, those kind of things. And by doing this, are we really taking that possibility out of the realm of having that happen where obviously a C4 or an R4 is going to take that out of the realm. So I just, or a barber shop or, just some of that's what makes some of these neighborhoods really charming. And so I just don't
Yes.
know if this is the right thing at the right time, I guess.
Yeah.
As we're working through our general plan.
So you would take that out of the possibility for this property, but you wouldn't take it out of possibility for the property to the north, the properties across the street. There's a neighborhood commercial. There's several commercial properties in the neighborhood where you could do that. So you're not removing that possibility from the entire neighborhood.
Barton, that driveway, that's a shared driveway access with the property to the north, or is that?
I don't think it's actually a shared driveway. I think it's, well,
Just curious where that property line lines up on that driveway.
yeah.
Maybe just,
Oh,
maybe it's a shared entrance, but the north side may be more developed.
yeah,
Let me see.
okay, yeah, it looks like the driveway is a shared driveway with that property to the north. Not sure exactly where the property line lands.
Wonder if we can have that in when we
Yeah.
look at this on the 4th, that'd be.
Yeah.
I'm just, and we, in the planning commission didn't hear from the neighbor in their review.
No.
Okay. Okay, no other questions? Appreciate you, Barton. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, up next, we have the proposed fiscal year 2024-2025 budget and staffing document amendments. And we'll invite Mayor Brown up and Mayor Brown and Mayor Nadolski.
We're not the first
And
one
potentially
to
Justin
get tripped up by that.
here.
We'll bring
Saw
him up
here.
at the end
Yeah,
if that's okay, Chair.
absolutely. So
He's our home run hitter, so we'll
Yeah.
bring him up at the end.
sounds good. Clean up. Okay.
Good? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for making this opportunity available. I've been dying to have this discussion with you guys because if there's time, Chair, I need to tell a little bit of a story, and it's kind of a journey. We have been,
We got about 45 minutes.
oh, I'll take all of it. That's what politicians do. Give me a mic. No, I think it's really important just for context. We have been growing through a lot of experiences since I started as the mayor. And I want to share some of that just for context and background for the request today, because it's really, really relevant. When we, and I'll just put a little plug that a lot of what we're about to talk about is going to culminate in some really exciting announcements on January 29th at 6 p.m. at the Copper Nickel for the State of the City address. Where again, we're going to reflect on the year that we had together and what we accomplished and what we can look forward to in the year ahead and the years ahead. And what vision and mission and the values and the way that we're going to drive forward collectively, moving forward in a shared vision. So when I started the job, inauguration day was really nerve wracking, and I presented my 100-day plan. In that 100-day plan, I did have a vision that talked about setting, creating an environment for people to succeed. And so what we're going to launch on January 29th is going to be a big step forward from that start. But as we have conceptualized how we operate as a city, me as the mayor have an amazing opportunity to lead nearly 700 employees every day internally, and I lead on behalf of 90,000 people externally every day. That's a really challenging leadership role, one I obviously embrace and I love. But as we go about the day-to-day work of the city, it becomes really challenging, and we need to be really mindful of leading down and in at the city and leading out and up for and with our people, and making sure that we have a mission for our staff to follow that fits and delivers for our people and the vision that they have and we have for our city, if that makes sense. If we have a mission for our staff that does not accomplish and drive toward success for our people, then we're just spinning our wheels, right? And so it's really important that we have cohesion and that those two things sort of dovetail together. At the same time, we need to be looking at operational efficiencies and finding ways that we can operate smoother and faster and more efficiently so that we can free up resources so that we don't have to continue to go back to the trough and asking for tax revenue. We need to be able to really identify what our priorities are, which also means the things that we're going to work on, but also the things that we're not going to work on, because we have a really steady focus on priorities. And that can also free up operational efficiencies and resources for new needs and demands. So that's kind of a big picture take of where we are about to be when we launch on the 29th. So we're just a little early. This will make a lot more sense after we launched our vision and brand on the 29th, but we really couldn't wait that long. We're struggling too much. Mara is drowning. Mara needs help, and we're running at two different paces, and I'll explain why. And so the request is to provide the resource on a longer term basis that we've been operating with for me, and providing the same level of support for Mara so that we're running at the same pace and the same speed. And if we are clearly in communication and aligned with each other, we're running in the same direction. Where we found that we struggle is when we're at different paces. And if I get ahead of her or she gets ahead of me, it becomes a little disjunct. So we admittedly have grown through a lot of challenges along the way. So I didn't arrive and we just had this perfect idea of how we're going to structure our office. I've kind of had to live through it and learn some pretty hard lessons and some really fulfilling lessons along the way. And so we continue to refine. So what we're talking about today, I just want to tell you that I'm not married to any title. We'll probably be making pivots and adjustments along the way as we perfect this thing as a team. But I am married to the need for elevating the vision and the direction and the coordination of this entire city at the 9th floor, at the administrative level with me and Mara. I think as the mayor, it's incumbent on me that I set the vision for the city. And as the CAO, Mara is my right hand in executing on that. She oversees and leads internally with our staff, consistent with the vision and direction that I set as the mayor. Now, it has become really clear that if I'm going to go somewhere, everywhere I go, someone's asking for something or demanding something or needing, and I'm not critical of that. I'm just saying that everywhere I go creates work. And I'm love to work, I'll work hard. But if let's pretend I go out to a meeting and someone asks I run into Doug Clark. Doug Clark says, this is just the email I was literally writing just now, so it's top of mind. Hey, it would be really cool if during the Ogden Marathon, if we had a flag flying over the canyon, same way that we do downtown. Wow, that's a fantastic idea. Well, that's going to require a lot of internal coordination and staff resources, right? Mara is the one that oversees that. Do I like the idea? Absolutely. Is it rooted in reality? And what are the realities of the staff burdens at that time of year, that's for Mara to decide. I need her input on that. And so that's me outside of our city building, coordinating externally and coming back with impacts on the internal. Now, if I have to take Mara with me everywhere I go, so that when those things come up every single day, all the time, Mara's going to be stuck not getting much done internally, right? She's going to be frozen in that role. And we are in high demand in our calendars. I just asked my office on my way down here, if you had to schedule Cindy and I, Mara and I in the same meeting, how long would it take? And it was March. Right now, if someone needed Mara and I today, we could squeeze them in March. And if our city is going to be running at that pace, we're never going to get to where we are capable of going. We need force multipliers that free up Mara and I, that are working on the things that we need them to work on while we work on the bigger things, and are driving those forward so that we are accomplishing more and more and more. I can share examples of how this has worked. The Doug Clark one and the Major Brent Taylor Foundation thing was literally just 5 minutes ago. That's a tiny example of the things that we come upon all day long. And if you compound that throughout a day, carried out throughout a week, week to week to week to week, that is a ton of coordination and resource, right? It just adds up. And we've got to get to a point where Mara and I are not frozen on all of the details. We've got people that can help us with them. And that the ninth floor doesn't become a barrier for decisions or for progress. But when everything is funneling through one or two people, especially as you have 700 working in that, decision points come. And if we are the only decision points and the only movement on the ninth floor, it's just going to slow the whole organization down. I mean, so the idea of the proposal is to elevate the vision and the direction for me on the vision side, so that eventually I can get to a point where I am really heavily focused and engaged externally, what we call out and up, serving the people, listening to their needs, coordinating and establishing partnerships, bringing resources to the table at the state and the federal level, being in the meetings and at the table with the Wasatch Front Regional Council, with the Olympics, with the major transportation issues, with the legislature, engaged with the congressional delegation, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all the things that I need to be doing in order to deliver the resources that executes on the vision, for Mara to take the resource and to plug it into the organization. I need Mara focused on strategy, big picture, leadership and management and oversight of FTEs and positions and accountability and measuring progress, et cetera. That's another level of executive function that executive leadership that Mara brings to the table, but without help, she's stuck in too many details along the way. Is that making sense? Mara, you can share your side. I can share some specific examples, recent ones that'll make sense for you as to how it has been working in this way on my side. And then she can share examples of how it hasn't, but.
Yeah, and that's an excellent framework for what we're trying to accomplish, and really looking to continue the catapulting forward that we see Ogden on that trajectory. And we talked about a year ago when the mayor got here, we were talking about Ogden being a sleeping giant that's now woken up. I mean, we're seeing the pace of change just hitting us kind of in an exponential fashion over the last few years, and really haven't been able to keep up with the needs and the pace, of change and all the positive things coming our way, many opportunities with external partners, and also what we're seeing at the same time to kind of meet those new demands, that we need to do a lot of strategic visioning within the city to look for operational efficiencies. And there's still a lot of day-to-day work on my plate. There's a lot of, we're also working on a lot of interdepartmental communication. We have interdepartmental committees that are looking at, human resources and benefits, IT, fleet and facilities, and so much coordination that's going on that really If I'm looking for a deputy to help with a lot of that day-to-day, that's very much in the details and then can report to me, but that frees me up to be looking at more bigger picture strategy, efficiencies, innovations, and things that other cities are frankly doing and have implemented, both in terms of software, hardware, structuring, organizational structuring, and things that we just haven't been able to catch up with in a number of years. And so those are some of the specific examples, are working with just a lot of, keeping track moving forward of projects that I'm working with the various departments on. But those are some things that they're very time consuming. My input is needed, but not at the beginning stages of projects. And so having another person will free me up to again, get out of the weeds when I'm not needed yet, and to focus on the bigger strategy that we need to be working on, and focus on the implementation of the mayor's strategic plan and visioning. So that right now, the way the mayor and I are visioning the position on his side is really a glue between the two of us, really doing real-time communication, daily communication, so that I can start working with my team and implementing down. And that's something that we're seeing the need for, and that that's been an effective way that we're communicating together. So those are some of the reasons here.
So can I share an example? I'm gonna use the P word, parking, not the G word, not gondola, but not P for pickleball either. Okay, so let's unpack some of our past experiences. We have the parking fiasco sort of hit us, kind of blow up on like a Thursday night. By the time Tuesday rolls around, there's just tons of energy and foment around frustration. I didn't know the words traveling around the city at the pace we can't keep up with, et cetera, right? And next thing you know, I find my face on the news for like 12 days straight. We're not making the kind of news that we want, right? Finally, we get to a point where I just said, we're going to hit pause for a minute while we regroup, right? Well, a regroup requires a lot of work. It requires that I get in the weeds with business owners. But as soon as I start doing that, I was like, I'm going to go down to 25th Street and start talking to business owners. Well, if you've ever done it, you can't just walk in while they're running a business, they're working. They don't have time to talk to the mayor about what the mayor needs to talk to them about right now. They're busy making sandwiches, rolling dough, serving, cutting hair, whatever it is that they are doing. That's not a good time to talk with them. So we need to schedule something out. But then there are other business owners that are not the frontline operator, and they kind of come in and they go at a different pace. So if you stop in, they're not even there. Well, we've got to track them down and find them. I'm hearing about frustrations, right? So finally I connect with the business owner, and we have a great conversation. It goes on for a couple hours. By the end of the conversation, they're telling me about 6 or 7 different business owners that really are frustrated and need to be engaged by the city. Well, give me those names and you have contact info. I don't have time as the mayor to go find 6 more meetings at that pace. That's another week for me, right? I don't think you guys want me wrapped up in a week coordinating meetings, but you do want me working on engaging businesses and unpacking the concerns, and you want me to hit that reset, right? During the pause, and you want that pause to be as short as possible. This compounds every day for about a month, okay? We're talking hundreds of people I now have to reach out to and engage with. But not all of them want to meet with me. They just want to express their input. And so this position that we're proposing put me in those positions. This position went into 25th Street, knew who the business owners were already because of a deep bench of contacts and history, and knew exactly where to start, where to go next, where to go next, where to go next. And then put a schedule together for me to go and meet with all of the connectors and the influencers within the business community so that I could have one-on-one conversations or 3-on-1, whatever it was, and that they would then reach out to other business owners within the network. At the end of the day, I probably sat and had about 15 different meetings around parking downtown alone. And we were able to reach hopefully 100 or more business owners as a result. And we were able to identify who the key voices are, who the influencers are, and the connectors. The people that carry, that are hearing from other business owners, et cetera. And that's how we were able to identify the different business types that have different needs, the different business locations. Literally 25th Street businesses on the north side differ in their opinions than the business on the south side because of what happens behind each side, right? The dynamics are different. But what about the businesses that are on 25th Street or on Washington and all the other interior streets? And what about the junction? They're all different. We were able to unpack all of that. And I just went and attended the meetings and had the conversations, and it saved me hundreds and hundreds of hours not doing the work to get me into those positions to succeed. So that over time we could get to last night, literally last night, with a facilitator on board, the staff selected to staff a committee, and we had a whole table, a round table full of business owners on the 7th floor, kicking off our committee process to come up with what businesses collectively need from us to succeed. That is a ton of work. We all want parking to succeed, right? Ken, you told me we got to make sure we get it right. We can't get it wrong right out of the gate. Well, this is the kind of work that's required of getting it right. And I don't have time as the mayor, and I don't think you want me wrapped around the axle of that. I need a force multiplier. I need someone out there making the contacts, developing the relationships, connecting the dots, developing the schedule, putting me in place to succeed. Because while this position was doing all of that work, I was doing a bunch of other things, like getting big projects moving with the county and with the school district, engaging with the legislature, visiting with the congressional delegation, beginning a community coordination for Olympic planning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on. Those are the things I need to be focused on, but I need support and help. Just like Mara described how she needed help on the internal side. So that's just a real world example of how we got to yesterday to launch finally on the committee piece. But if I don't have help, I have to take Mara everywhere I go.
Yeah.
Right? Can't do that.
And I might give another example that might be a question that you're asking yourselves, because we talked about doing a staffing study in the last budget. And so we've had a lot of challenges really kicking that off and determining really what the right model is to move forward with that, because a staffing study is really a lot more akin to a management study. It's a really in-depth type of a study. It's different from when we do a compensation study, and we've been determining that we're going to need to break that apart and do certain areas of the city first, and we're going to need to prioritize which areas to start in on. And the role that I envision the deputy CAO is to be able to do some deep analysis to help determine where we would start that study, to be a force multiplier for HR, for management services, where they're busy with their day-to-day. And it's been really hard for them to kick that off, because the more they get into it, they realize there's more information that they need to know where to start. So fortunately, we're about a month away from having an RFP, but that's the kind of work that I'd like to see a deputy doing, would be to get that deep analysis done to help us know how we can move forward and start creating some efficiencies. But it's taken a lot of time because of the day-to-day work that the other, the HR and that management services is already involved with. And so that would be a perfect example of where the deputy position can be a force multiplier toward getting toward efficiencies in the city that we need to work through.
We could go on and on with examples, but I think we made, hopefully,
No, I
got
appreciate it.
started on the convo.
Yeah, maybe so appreciate that, that context and understanding on, and those examples. I guess just does the council, is there any questions or discussion or anything specific that you'd like to talk about? Councilmember Myers?
Yeah, it states in our notes that
this is budget neutral for this year. Just tell me what impact that would have for 2026.
Oh, sure. And we'll have, Justice Sorensen will come up next to go over that whole budget impact in just a minute. So where we wanted to, yep.
Councilmember Hire.
I'm actually kind of refreshed. I think that, you know, as I kind of watched during the Caldwell administration, they were doing a lot of chasing of their tail, just to use you know, an example. And it seemed like to me at that time that they needed more help at the top, just because there's, you know, we've got a lot going on in the city. A couple of other things that I felt like we've maybe been a little short on is we don't really promote our own successes very well because we're just too busy. It just happens that we just don't promote that. You know, I spent a lot of time when I was in working with the Boy Scouts, doing leadership training and stuff. And what the mayor and mayor are talking about, it seemed to me as though they're pretty sound leadership principle. How they organize it, I don't know that it matters one way or the other to me, what they call somebody or, but I like the way he and she have presented their vision of how this leadership should go, because I do think that I like the fourth multiplayer, word. So, certainly, I don't know that it's done cooking yet, and I don't think you think it is. But I'm certainly kind of excited that we're moving in that direction. I think that's going to make us healthier. I think that will help downwardly with the employees that maybe are frustrated with chaos that might be surrounding them. Maybe it'll help with that chaos kind of a component. So anyway, I was excited about it. I'm going to see it. I'm excited to see what you do with this.
Thanks. Yeah, I talked to Mayor Caldwell quite a while ago about it, and I think they came from a really altruistic place when they didn't add resource to them for themselves, because they wanted to help others first. And so there's an altruistic reason for that, and I commend them for that. The what then happens is more decisions and more things are happening down at the lower level that are sort of pouring upward and getting stuck in the pinch again. And so the more we flatten down low, the more pinch point it creates up high, if that makes sense. Because everything funneling through such a narrow pinch point at the end is limiting in our efficiency. But also, like Mary was saying, with some of the efficiency opportunities we have, they're out there. And we're really excited to be innovative and forward thinking with technology. And there's a lot of excitement around the staff for those new tools to take off their backs. There's so much to get to there because we're drowning in the day-to-day. That makes sense.
Councilmember Graff.
Thanks. And I too appreciate the need for adding team at the top. It just makes a lot of sense. And it's budget neutral for this year because we've got some unused wages. And looking into where those are coming from, we're short a code services director, we're short an assistant economic development director, and we're short a business recruitment coordinator. And for me, looking at, let's say it's $375,000 for these two positions annually. At least two of those positions, the economic development director and the business recruitment director, could potentially be out there generating the income that pays for these two new positions, but we aren't filling those positions, nor have we filled 7 of the new positions that we said yes to in August. So I'm just a little I want, it goes to sustainability, I guess, really, you know, what are we gonna do next year? When we don't have the two positions in community and economic development and our code services area, which has been empty for a while. So I'm just a little bit worried about that. That makes, what, 702 employees.
So I'll give some input and rely on the team for some details, but two of the three that, I don't remember the date that this transmittal came, but it's been hanging. 3 of the 3 are now filled. And so at the time of the transmittal, they were vacant.
Okay.
So they're no longer. That's why
Thanks
we're,
for that.
yeah. So, but it's really hard to get to the point where we're filling them as well. Because while those positions are vacant, guess who's stepping up to backfill the crushing demand of each of those vacancies? In the case of the code services director and the building services director,
Executive.
Jared was, at the same time that he was trying to fill a vacancy for an airport manager, director, which took quite some time. At the same time that he was trying to fill, well, at the same time, he's we're dealing with operational urgencies every day. It is pounding them because they're emergency services that people need, you know? Guess what? Takes a while, the job recruitment. And so there's these lags that happen because we don't have our bandwidth at the top, you know what I mean? So I understand your concern.
Better go to Justin's conversation around how we sustain this.
Correct.
in the upcoming budget
Right.
cycle. Thank you.
No, I just, yeah, looking to see any other question? Councilmember Blair?
I do and I don't understand the need for the positions. I guess some of my questions are, how did we land on the assistant executive department director salary range and then that level? I guess I'd like to hear some explaining on that.
Sure. I can explain that. It really came from looking at the needs that we have for these positions to do, and they're not executive director level positions, but they were assistant because there's some level of autonomy and leadership that these positions have. They're taking on a role representing myself and the mayor at different functions. And so we have position description questionnaires that although these positions weren't, I'm gonna have to check that with Heather, but we have ways of comparing like current positions and what level of responsibilities that they have. And so these matched up with the levels of responsibilities that deputy directors have. So that's where.
So I guess I have that raises another question. And again, it's not my side, not my role, but I have some heartburn over either one of your assistants representing the city. You were voted in and you were appointed to represent the city. And I feel like that's who should be representing the city.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
Yeah.
To send two other people, I have some heartburn over. That's my own opinion. Those are some of my concerns.
Yeah.
So what does representing the city to you look like? Like
I
that
think
you wouldn't want to do it.
they're, yeah, I mean, when you're asked to be there, I would think that's you representing the city, you being there. Again, any board you sit on, I would assume that's you sitting on the board. Any committee you sit on, that's you sitting on the committee. But again, I don't know. I don't know your time constraints. That's just me. So I was just curious about those two. That I mean, it says right out, that's the very first, second thing under the deputy CEO, represent the city. So.
Yeah. And I think that there would be times that I would be, in order to accomplish the level of workload for my position, that I might be sending somebody to represent me like at a meeting external or internal to the city. And it wouldn't be, they wouldn't be me, but they would be there on my behalf. And so not making decisions that I would make, but being somewhere on my behalf because I couldn't be there. So it's not unusual that I would have to occasionally delegate to somebody because of a conflict that I might have in my schedule. So it wouldn't be taking my place specifically, but really sitting in for me when I couldn't attend.
So
But-
just hypothetically, if you couldn't attend right now, who do you send in your place?
Well, I do have, so, and I do have, let's say for the Ogden CAN, the Civic Action Network, for example, I can't always attend those meetings. And right now we have two positions from the city. One is the Community Engagement Administrator attends, and then we have Kathy Fuentes from Community Development attend as well. And those just seem like those are aligned with their positions and they can report back on issues. And so that's just an example right now where I can't attend all those meetings. And so I find individual staff within the city whose positions are aligned with the content of the meeting.
I think I guess when I was thinking and used the word represent the city, I thought of it differently than I think how you received it. Like, no one's giving speeches for me. I'm making decisions on my own and independently. In the way you're viewing it, I am absolutely representing the city.
Oh.
And this role I was viewing more as like, can you fill in for me on this little thing here? So that I can go represent the city. So it's a little semantics, but it's significant for you. Is no one's representing me. I am me. I represent the city because you're right, I was elected. But I can't be everywhere all the time, and they're just become scheduling conflicts. The demand for our time is off the charts. And so we need to be really specific about where we choose to be and not be to represent the city. But we need somebody doing some work for us in the background where we can't be, I think is more how I was viewing it, not.
Another example would be any member of our staff that presents to the city council. I consider that to be representing the city. So, for example, just when, our management services director, executive director presents, or when our the division director, comptroller presents, those are individuals that are representing the city. The division, director is an appointed position, but they're representing the city when they make presentations to the council. So those are an example of staff at certain levels that I think have that kind of external responsibility.
Okay. Vice Chair White.
Yeah, so I've been pretty vocal and direct with you and I just, so a couple of things, and maybe you can just work me through why you called it the chief of staff. Just my experience with different chiefs of staff is a much, I envision it as a much more policy driven kind of position more than an assistant type position. And so maybe could you
Can I
walk me through?
Do you want to take that?
Can I take the first tab at it?
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. We're kind of the two-headed monster sometimes. Okay. I remember how I started off. It's like we're growing through this. We toy with different dynamics and different structures and different titles and everything. And like I said in the beginning, I really don't care what it's called. I just need help. We need the work. But when you look into the title of chief of staff, and one of the things that Mara spent a lot of time doing is comparing structures of different cities, both in Utah and outside of Utah. But you need to compare us to other cities of similar government type, right? And what you find is no one's the same. And the titles are all different. And so I think as I've talked with my peers around other cities, a new mayor comes in and they have the existing FTEs and resources, and then they use them how they want to use them. And so the original intent and the title is tied to maybe the original proposal, and then the current mayor adjusts and pivots with the current title and the current role, how he or she wants to see it. And so over time, what you see is this morph happening, but it's flexible and it adapts to different mayors without having to change the structure, underlying structure. But then what ends up happening is you have different people doing different types of duties with the same role or title. And so, but when you look at chief of staff specifically in literature and leadership resources, it's not a position that supervises a lot of people. It's not, it's a position that doesn't have supervisory duties, but it's really action oriented, et cetera, et cetera. And so it fit for what my vision is for right now. I'm totally open to other titles because I don't want to create misperceptions based on other city structures either. You know what I mean? That's just my lesson learned over time. Anything to add for?
Yeah, no, just completely agree that it, the title of that was something that just evolved, that we talked about, and, deputy to the mayor, deputy mayor, chief of staff. I mean, there's so many different that just, coming up with something appropriate, because again, cities, a lot of the cities for that position have different titles, and
Yeah.
just finding something that seemed to resonate, not managing, like direct staff. I mean, but just having that close, real close role with the mayor is what
So,
we were
so we
envisioning.
started with like deputy to the mayor, really deliberate, because we were trying to avoid deputy mayor. Because for a lot of people that we heard from, that denoted, getting to what Councilmember Blair was saying, that representation of the city almost suggests this elected role, right? But it's not. And so that kind of has more of a connotation for a lot of people of representing and giving speeches and being, that, you know what I mean? Or filling in for me when I'm gone. But that's Mara. Mara fills in for me, right? Structurally. And so when we said deputy to the mayor, it wasn't deputy mayor, but everybody went direct like to that. Like they immediately, oh, you're deputy mayor, because that's what other cities have, right? But if you unpack what a deputy mayor actually is for the other cities, they're usually, for example, we talk about like Sandy City has a lady that's awesome, and she oversees government affairs and other duties as assigned. That lady does a ton of different things, and it's really similar to the role I'm asking for. But we were just trying to avoid this connotation that we didn't intend. So again, I really don't care what it's called. Just whatever fits with what we're comfortable with, we're good with.
I don't know how to ask this without, just try to ask. So going along with, sounds like this person or this position will be independent, or at least your function will be much more independent than maybe second position you're asking. Do you see those positions as equal then within your?
I do see them as equal in the extent of the mayor and I have our authority and our direction, and then they're sort of both at the same level underneath us. So I do, that's, yeah, they appear to be benched together, different responsibilities, different skills, but still really critical to each of us in that parallel way.
So I guess I guess the second question then is if there was a conflict between the two, how does that, do you step in? Do you step in? And I guess.
It's handled the same way everything is with Mayor and I. I mean, we talk constantly, except for when we're gone in different directions. And as soon as we have a chance to come back together, we work it out together. That's why we're a team. I mean, and if we don't agree, I make the decision. I'm the mayor. And so she informs me of my decision at that point, but we don't have a lot of conflict. It's more a matter of like just communication.
Yeah, communication, I was
Right.
just gonna say, it's the number one value of our office, and just really making sure that it's funneling up, funneling down, across. And again, that's why these positions are just critical.
I guess this is more, and these are all the things that I've said, probably to both of you, but if you have a directive of XYZ, does that position, not the person, but the position, have the authority to overrule something that maybe at an executive director level, that person is actually telling that executive director that they have to do that, or is it going to go through Mara first? Does that make sense?
Not really, other than to say,
Let's say something happens and you say, I want this position to direct something in management services, and then they go directly to management services, which is in maybe conflict with something that maybe Mara has already said to them. How do you
Oh,
foresee
Oh,
something
mom
like
and
that?
dad thing, is that what you're talking about?
Oh, more about just, yeah.
that's
maybe
one
a
way to
little
put it.
bit.
Yeah.
You know, I don't, I'm trying to figure out how much authority this position would have over other executive directors.
Oh,
And
none.
that's what I
That's
just
the,
wondered.
that's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
point.
none.
So,
It,
Yeah.
it,
Thank
it-
you for letting me circular.
No, you're good.
none, no, everything would still, and for that matter, flow over to me and then down to
Yeah,
the
they're not the
departments.
decision maker or the supervisor or
Okay.
they're the fourth multiplier for us, working in our direction and any collaboration. I mean, we're trying to bring direction and control of the organization, starting more at the top in terms of the direction and the prioritization and the collaboration. There's gonna be a little more top down, and this is a force multiplier in that regard, but not a supervisory role or a directing role or a representing role. Other than, I need you to fill in for me and at my directive to get this XYZ done. So,
Since we're talking about organizing, can you, either one of you, explain, I mean, because there's been some changes, right? So tell me what changes have been made, and then it looks like we're still trying to find a deputy CAO. Yeah. We've had someone. I don't know, I can't say that that person's been promoted because it's not a position yet.
they haven't made a dime.
Okay, but someone has been hired to fill that spot, correct? Okay, so,
Okay, so basically I've been using someone that we have who's absolutely killing it for me. And in a way that I need. And it feels that I've asked a lot of her. And I've had a long career in public administration and I've supervised a lot of people. I have never in my entire career seen anybody thrive and grow the way that she has. But the point is, no, we haven't made that official promotion because it doesn't exist. She is just being an absolute game team player and is just being unbelievably selfless and saying, I just want to help you succeed and help Ogden succeed, because she's believing in it and feeling the energy and the vision. And she's like, so she's just stepped in and been an enormous team player up to this point.
I'm just going to interject here. So what we need to do, we have our city council meeting noticed at 5:15. So we need to adjourn the work session. We do have a space in our city council meeting where we were going to recess. So what we can do is adjourn this meeting, recess. What did I say? Something else? Adjourn. Well, I mean, we need to adjourn this meeting, the work session, and then we'll start our city council meeting, and then we'll recess, and then come back into our work session. Does that sound good? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's right, it's recessed.
Oh, we just need to recess this meeting. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, the words are words. We're gonna recess this meeting. And when you're ready, we can start the city council meeting. Okay, so welcome to the 5:15 city council meeting of January 14th, 2025. All council members are present with the exception of council member Chaburka, who's asked to be excused. At this time, we are removing from the agenda the closed session, consideration of going into the closed session. And we are going to pick up the work session, which we had just recessed. Is that right? And then, so we're going to recess from this, we're going to recess from the regular special city council meeting until 6 p.m. But now we're going to pick up back on the work session. I think we did that all right.
you sure did.
Okay, thank you so much.
Nailed it.
So with
Great.
with that, we're back in work session. And yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if there was any more questions related that you were going through, Councilmember Blair, that as we interrupted that. Or
Yeah,
you're,
I can. So I was just gonna ask Mara.
Yeah.
I mean, it would assume that on your side, you've just brought somebody up, correct? Is that your plan, to bring somebody from the city and move them up? Are we gonna go out into the community and look for someone yeah, I guess I'm just trying to figure out what that looks like.
My plan will be to post the position and go out and look for someone to fill it.
We posted the other one. Did we post the other one?
We posted the one that backfilled,
Just the backfill.
yeah, as temporary, full-time, right?
I just was gonna say, I don't have necessarily any questions. I recognize that, it's gotta be incredibly difficult to step into a mayor position and try and catch all the balls that are in the air and move things forward and figure out what's going on. And I think we have seen that. So I am supportive of this. My hope is that, these positions will allow you to be more effective, be those force multipliers to move the city forward. And ultimately, hopefully they would pay for themselves by creating those efficiencies and figuring out ways that we can, as a city, continue to develop the way we need to go with your leadership. And so if this is something that you're asking for, I can support that. I know we haven't talked about the finance piece yet, but that's, something we need to discuss as well. And, yeah. Before we move to that, Councilmember Myers, any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I do have one last comment. That is from an outsider just stepping in as a new council member this year. I was stunned at the lack of help that our administrative staff have. Because I see other organizations and how they run. I didn't know how that chain of command worked. I knew how the dynamics work between mayor and payroll, but I was quite surprised that there was not other people in your office that picked up some of those balls or made it work. And so I think this is a great move for our city. I think it's gonna make us more dynamic, and I agree with what you stated as the positives of this. I don't see outside.
Appreciate it. For comparison's sake, if you go to meetings with me and you meet with other mayors, the other mayors arrive with absolute entourages. It's crazy. They've got 2 or 3 vice mayors in tow. They got a communications lead. They've got an administrative support staff. And there's just this giant machine around them. And I don't need that. I'm not asking for that. I don't want an entourage. I'm just asking for a little bit of help. And I'll just make the point that I have really enjoyed our first year together and have appreciated the input you guys have given, and the feedback has been positive that we like the direction that we're going and how things are working. We know they can work better. They absolutely can. But I just want to make the point that it didn't happen by accident. It was made to happen by people. And in this case, it was someone that we elevated, and she stepped up and has absolutely led at a level that she hasn't ever been asked to, and she is thriving. And that's what I want for everybody. I want to empower our people to be their best, to give them the challenges that require them to step up and lean in, to be uncomfortable and to grow through challenges. Watching her do that has been one of the biggest highlights of my role so far, and it's bringing out more and more of her. But my point I'm making too is that if we like the way things are going, it is a reflection of what we're requesting today, because we've been trying to fit it. You know what I mean? But I do have days where my choices are to slow down, sometimes even stop, because I notice that I'm going so hard and so fast. I don't know if anybody notices, but I have a lot of energy. I work a lot of hours. I work really hard, and I'm proud of that. And I want to keep working harder. But the harder I work, the harder it is on Mara. And so if you have concerns around me or my position, that's fine. But we've got to rescue Mara. Mara is I'm asking too much of Mara. She needs help, and the city needs her to have that help. We are at the table in ways we never have been before as a city. That's not my doing alone. That's been building, right? it's time for us to be the big kids and the grownups at the table along with everybody else. And to have the staff and the resources and the support to swing huge wins for our city.
Mary, you had a comment?
I just wanted to comment, and I appreciate the mayor's comments. I can see so much more potential for this role in terms of leadership, innovation, strategy than there's time in the days for. And so I think that's really what I think the city demands of this position and deserves of this position, is to have an opportunity for somebody that can be more strategic. When I do participate in both state and national level, conferences of city managers and city administrators, there is so much innovation out there that we've just not had the bandwidth to approach and try to bring back to this team. And so that's what I'm really hoping for, the ability to more fully step into a position that I think that the citizens deserve of this position, rather than just spending my time in the weeds in leading. And when I look back, we accomplished so much last year. So there's not to say that, a tremendous amount wasn't done, but it's really the goals and the opportunities and the potential that I see that I'd really like to achieve on behalf of the citizens. And that's why we're asking for it.
Thank you. Vice Chair, what, you have another comment?
Sorry, I just haven't, I know this is probably getting way into the weeds, but this is what we do. So one of my other concerns was that, maybe the next mayor isn't gonna want this position, and yet we now have this position sitting there. What are our opportunities to not have that position any longer? And it's just the position, I'm not talking about any. I just am trying to be careful in how I say that, but
Yeah, they're both would be non-merit appointed positions in the mayor's office. And so, at will positions. If they weren't needed in the future by a future administration, then those positions could be terminated by a future mayor.
And from a council perspective, you can get rid of any position you want when you don't fund them in the budget.
Exactly. Right.
I don't want to be saying that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not my intent. It's more about the structure of a new mayor.
I just have one other question. And again, sorry, not that they're not to you. Mayor, I have a question for you. It seems throughout my tenure with the city that we have done a great job of training and empowering and allowing our employees to move up the chain, correct? And my question is, at some point, you'll have a deputy CAO. I know that that's an appointed position, but would they be the front, would you consider them the front runner, the likely heir apparent to be the next CAO? Is that, you feel that's kind of how that works? Because I don't.
Yeah, and I don't either, and that's why it is slotted at the deputy executive director level, is because that it is not at the level. Let's just say if using myself as an example, coming from an executive director level position in management services to the position I have now, which I'm grateful that I had that growth opportunity. I don't see it as, I see it under those executive director level positions. And so there'd be a lot of training, but also, again, more in the really somebody doing a lot of, deep analysis, deep, assisting with strategy formation, a lot of potential research, skills in economic development, skills in, financial strategy, just a different type of position that could potentially grow into an executive director level position, let's say, in the city, depending on their skill set, but not a direct necessarily. Depending on the person who's hired, I can't speak for a future person who maybe comes from, it could possibly be somebody that comes from a similar city manager or city administrative position of a smaller city that wants to be here in Ogden. So that's quite possible too. So, but at least the way it's structured, it's not necessarily in that chain, but I mean, depending on the person who applies and is hired, they could have the skill set.
All right, we ready to bring up Justin? Look at some numbers. Come on up, Justin, and we'll go over your presentation that associated with this.
Thank you, Chair. Um, so normally a budget neutral budget transfer doesn't require council approval, but where this one is moving funds between departments, that's why it's coming before you, because the proposal is to move budgets between different departments. And so kind of an explanation of the numbers in this projection, and then I'll talk about next year as well. But for this year, when I was asked to put this proposal together for on the number side, what we did is we took where the two positions fell, the range that they fell into, and we projected 7 months of wages at the time we were working on this. And so the amount that would be going into the mayor's wages and benefits would be approximately 7 months worth of cost for both positions at the middle of those ranges. And so that's where the initial discussion was. And so then from there, we looked at how we can make it budget neutral. As you can see, there was some adjustments to management services operating accounts within the management services admin, professional and technical, the justice court professional and technical, my office's professional and technical, and fiscal operations professional and technical, taking some funds from each of those to help fund this. And then also from our general fund expense contingency, we do have a little bit left in that this year as well that we'd propose using. That's in non-departmental. And then, as was mentioned earlier with positions, when we were looking at how to fund this, we did have positions, newly funded positions that had not been filled yet, as well as open positions at the time that were discussed, the building services director, the assistant economic development director, and the business recruitment coordinator. And so what we did is we took what was budgeted for those positions. At the time, we took 6 pay periods worth of costs of what those positions would cost. And that's how we came up with the numbers of the 40,000 from building services, the 79,000 from economic development. And then for the rest of the positions, the newly funded positions, we took 2 pay periods for the aquatics position, parks maintenance engineering, to help fund the rest. And so that made up the delta to be able to fund the 241,000 to make it budget neutral this year. And so are there any questions on that and how we came up with those numbers for this year? Okay. So then the ordinance that's being proposed would be to move those budgets into the mayor's office for these 2 positions, and then amend the staffing document to add these 2 new positions, which has been mentioned would be a grade 190. So that would increase the total number of authorized positions in the mayor's office to 6. And so with that, as far as the fiscal year 20, I didn't have a slide for this, and I can add this for council meeting if you would like me to. But for fiscal year 2026, the total cost of these 2 positions, if we were to do it at the middle of their ranges, is approximately 413,000. I believe that's in the packet. It talks about that. And so the impact next year would be as high as that. But in talking to Mara and the mayor, the proposal would be to look at hiring these at the bottom of those ranges. So that automatically would bring down that cost by 20,000 plus benefits per position, so $40,000. So we'd be looking at approximately I had my notes here. I apologize. Approximately 373,000 would be the impact for next year. But if we end up taking the reduction that I showed earlier to operating accounts and we make that permanent, that would reduce down that increase to the budget next year by an additional 69,000. So the net impact for fiscal year 26 would be 300,000 for these 2 positions. And so when we go through the budget process, when we start, which we are the beginning process of that right now for next year, we take all of the authorized positions, and if they are filled, we will project a budget for those filled positions. And if they're vacant, we will project a budget for those vacant positions. And so If these two positions are added, those would be considered as part of the beginning budget numbers that we would project for next year. And then we would build our balancing off of that. And so if that requires an increase overall to the budget, then we would look at what we need to do to make sure we're balanced within the general fund. Just for context, that 300,000 is approximately 0.4% of the general fund. The total general fund budget is $90 million this year. And so it's a very small amount, but as we go through the process and meeting to balance the budget, we would look at making sure that now that if these are adopted, that they would be included in that balancing.
All right. Thank you, Justin. Any
Just a
questions?
real
Yeah.
quick question, so. I guess I look at this and it looks as though, these are vacant positions, or vacancies. And, last year we are trying to use vacancies as a way to give wage increases. So I don't even know what my question is, but what are your thoughts, I guess, going forward? Are we going to be able to continue to do that? Is this something that you're going to continue as we add new positions? Is this how you're going to fund them?
So I can't speak for any future requests that way. Obviously, those are all taken in with each circumstance. But in regards to the discussion that we've had of excess wages being used for the next year, that is something our office is tracking. And so with these positions, if we move these funds into the mayor's budget, whatever that excess would also be added to that bucket of available to be able to use next year for wages as well. And so as we project out what we're thinking, where we're going to finish this year, we'll continue to account for that. What will be interesting to track as we continue to do this, because this is our first year, really trying to keep an eye on and project out where we're going to be, so that as we project the budget for next year, it increases how much fund balance we'll have available to us to use. We are trying to track that in a way so that, well, we have a historical, I've looked back historically. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I've looked back historically and over the last, I pulled these numbers today. I think over the last 9 or 10 years, we have averaged around just under 2 million as our excess wage dollars in the general fund. So that's a 10-year average. But I've lost my train of thought. There was something I was going to share with you in regarding that. Any other questions? And hopefully I remember what it was that I was going to say.
No, I think, there was kind of more of a gentleman's agreement that that's how we were going to do it. And then, this shows up. And I guess that's a little, I guess if they were new positions in July, we would have to use that anyway. So I understand that. I want to be
Right.
really protective of that vacancy money.
Right.
Because obviously that's what
Right.
we're hoping or banking for to help us
I just
forward.
remember my train of thought. So one thing that will be interesting to see is as we are trying to be more competitive with our ranges and trying to not have as high a turnover, and that, that will be something that we'll be keeping an eye on as well. Because if we are more fully staffed more often than that will impact what we would have available each year. So that is something we'll keep an eye on, but you're absolutely right. We actually, with our financial statements this year, if you look at our fund balance summary where it talks about our assigned fund balance, which is a lot of encumbrances, we've also added a section for wages. And so we've added that as a spot on our financial statements to help track year over year. So that's going to help us as we move forward. So this year, for fiscal year 25, for fiscal year 24, we had just over 2 million in excess. So that shows on our financial statements, but we only used, I think, 900,000 of it this year. So we are tracking that as a separate piece in our financial statements right now.
Thank you.
Justin, I'm sorry, you might have answered this question in what you shared with Marcia, but I've lost my train of thought too. So you were able to go in and identify $241,400 worth of unused wages to fund these two positions for the remainder of this budget cycle. How much more money is laying there unused in wages currently? So if you were able to slice a $241,000 piece of the pie out, how much of the pie is currently left? Unused wages for 25.
Overall for the whole general fund,
Yeah.
or
Yep.
we'd have
all
to,
employees.
I'd have to look to see, but we can definitely provide that information on year to date, what's been spent versus what we've anticipated to spend. I can pull those numbers and we can share that with.
Yeah, I'm
with-
curious because if we just narrow this down to, let's say it was the 3 positions in CED that accumulated enough unused wages to pay the 241.4. And now those positions are full.
Mhm.
So there's no bucket
Excess.
to move money from to this new bucket currently. So
Well-
I'm looking to see how deep this, how sustainable this is. I heard you say that the average in 10 years is $2 million of unused wages.
Mhm.
But at some point in time, we may be fully staffed
Right,
and all of those wages we lose that play.
right. A little bit more specifically on this scenario though. So with those positions, we looked at what was budgeted this year and we took a portion of what was budgeted and that's what we're shifting to the mayor's office to use. And so, but then when we go to project next year, we would project a full year's budget. So that's where when I say the impact for next year, we're looking at 300,000 because essentially it's like we're adding both of these positions to the budget next year because this funding that we've pulled out of these specific areas would need to obviously be
Back in there.
back in those areas for those positions because they are filled or they are authorized positions.
Theoretically, let's just say in 2026, we're fully staffed. Nobody quits. We don't have a down week on payroll. And we've got these 2 new positions. It's potentially the case where we're gonna have to look at, we're running out of room here. And we're gonna have to make some adjustments to save $370,000, right?
Yeah, so as part of the budgeting process, one of the things that we do look at is attrition. And so when we do our balancing, we project out what a flat projection will be, and that would include any attrition, so retirements, changes in insurance, turnover, things like that. So that does have budgetary impacts. And so that does help with the need of, so that is another way that we're able to help fund these positions ongoing when we add this back in.
Thanks for that. I know there's a lot of room for that when we're dealing with 700 people versus a staff account. So
Right.
thanks for the clarity.
I also want to just mention that, fund balance, we've set some fund balance limits. That goes up and down. The city has a healthy fund balance and just in my opinion, $300,000 more with the kind of money we're talking about, it's not a lot compared to the amount of money we're talking about.
Thanks, Lisa.
Can you go back 2 slides or that one?
This one, oops,
Go one more.
That one.
Sorry. So, and I'm just asking.
Yeah, right.
I think you and Janine, just not saying I will or want to, I'm just saying it is our role. So because it's a new position, we decide what the grade of the position, is that correct? We get to make that decision, the grade, and then when that grade then puts it in a certain pay range in the class and the pay range. Is that correct? Not saying I will, I'm just saying that is our role.
when you would adopt the staffing document, with those, the grade that they have, yes, that, yeah. So you would be adopting, yeah, that's, yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Okay, we'll look at this all again on February 4th. And yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
At this point, we'll officially adjourn the work session and pick up the recess city council meeting at 6 p.m. in the council chambers. Or as close to 6 p.m. as we can.